I just finished making these butter roasted with herbs, radish, and salmon. It's perfect with rice, but also we made a quick buttermilk ranch to go on top, and I wanna bring you along with me so you can see each step that I took to make this whole dish, whole meal that you can mimic in your own home, because let me tell you something. If you haven't roasted radish, this might change your mind, especially when you have a good ranch dressing to put on top. Let's make it. If you don't grow radish, you probably see them in farmer's market, you see them in the grocery store, and what do you do with them? Well, you eat them, you put them on salads, you eat them fresh. They have a slight spiciness, but usually a sweetness too. Today we are gonna roast radish. Don't turn this off. It's exciting because we're gonna roast radish with a lot of flavor, add a lot of great deliciousness to it, but then we're also gonna put salmon with it, we're gonna have rice, we're gonna make a wonderful dressing for everything, and it's a great meal because it utilizes one of my favorite things, radish and salmon, and fresh herbs and fresh flavors, and that's what's important here. So to start, we're gonna talk about the radish. Now, I grow my radish, but you can use any type of radish. Now, I grow a mixture. These Zlata get really big, you can see. I do an Easter egg mix that has the different colors. Now, if you get big ones like this, as long as they're not woody, which you can see there's no resistance in that, it has a beautiful texture, I'll either slice them in half or in quarters. And you can do that by a personal preference. I like some big pieces, I like some small pieces, but I do want them to be bite-sized where you can take a bite on a fork and not have to just take a piece off, but be able to put the whole thing in. So when they're bigger, I definitely slice them in half, and some of them you can see I sliced in quarters because they were that big. Now you're probably thinking, I haven't heard of roasted radish. It's the new it food, let me tell you. And if nowhere else than here, it is here. They get a creaminess on the inside, almost, like not a potato, but they get a nice creaminess that I think is important to know about. And they have that nice flavor, and they get even more sweet in the oven. So what we have here are all of our radish ready to go. And now we want to add some flavor and some fat. So fat can be an oil, but in this case, we're going to use butter. And that's because I like how the butter, if you know anything about traditional radish, some people will put butter on a slice of bread and just slice radishes over it. Butter lends so well with radish. I'm gonna get a quick spatula because I don't want to have any of this butter go to waste. And it lends just perfectly with the flavor. The richness of the butter, it really does. It works much better than just an oil. So to that, we're gonna do a couple things here. So we're gonna do some salt. Super important here to add the salt. That's gonna really balance out the flavors and really bring out flavor. We're also gonna add some dried garlic. We're gonna put a little bit of that garlic powder right on them. And that is gonna really just kind of ump up the seasoning. And we're doing that again with some onion powder too. Anytime I'm gonna roast something, I don't like to use raw garlic because I find it can burn, it can get bitter. But when you use the dried herbs and spices, they work so much better. So to that, we're gonna of course do some black pepper. Super important to put that on there. And then some dill. Dill is gonna come in a little bit later too in the fresh use. But here we just want to put a little bit of dill on, and this is the dry dill, again, because I don't want it to burn, and that's what's going to work here. So I'm just going to stir this together, and you just want to make sure you somewhat evenly coat it. You know, that butter, when it hits, if it's a cold radish, it can re-solidify. So all these obviously are washed, and then I let them dry, because that butter's going to stick to them better if they are dry, which you can see it's starting to coat them. See how the spices are, like that wonderful dill is sticking to them? That's exactly what you want. So then we're going to put them right on a roasting pan. I have it lined with parchment just so it's easier. And then I'm gonna make sure I scrape out any of that residual butter. Residual butter is a thing we all need in life. And you wanna scrape it out because it's flavor, it's the goodness, and you don't want it to go to waste. So I'm gonna just spread these out into an even layer, and you can see how they're coated? That's what we want. And we're gonna put them in a high heat oven. But these take longer than salmon, and I don't wanna overcook the salmon because nothing is worse than overcooked salmon. It's sad. So what I'm gonna do is put these in for a while, then we'll add the salmon to it, and it will all finish together. But we'll get the rice going too in that time. But let's get these roasting. It's gonna smell amazing. While the radish are roasting, we're gonna get the rice going. So I'm gonna use chicken stock. You can use chicken, vegetable, whatever you want. It just adds more flavor than water. You could do water, but why? And then we're gonna put that in there. And then I have my rinsed and drained rice. I'm gonna add that right to it. And I wanna make sure to get it all out of there. It kind of sticks in after you rinse it. And then I'm gonna put that, and then I just want a little bit of salt. I think you need that seasoning when you're making this. So I'm gonna put in just a little bit of salt, nice pinch there. We're gonna let that come to a simmer, then we're gonna put it on low, cover it, and let it just cook. So while that's coming to a simmer though, I thought we could get our dressing ready. This is like a sauce at the end. This is one of those meals that I think is really pulled together with a sauce. For me in life, the sauce is what makes something. I love the sauce. So we're gonna start with some mayonnaise. It's really a quick buttermilk ranch. We're gonna put the mayonnaise right in here. I always use homemade mayonnaise. You can find the recipe on my website, but you could use whatever your favorite mayonnaise is. And we all have our favorites, and I'm not gonna get into which one is best. So then I'm gonna put in some Greek yogurt. I find that tempers out the mayonnaise, kind of balances it a little better, which I like. Buttermilk flavor. We're gonna put that right in there. And you can always hold a little bit of the buttermilk back just to see how much you're gonna need. Then let's talk about herbs. I go out to my garden and see what I have in. I always will have dill in it just because I like that. And we're using salmon, we're using it on the radish. I have some tarragon and some basil. Now, you can do whatever mixture you like. I think this is a great starting point. And then it can kind of just give you that fresh mixture, because ranch has a mixture of herbs. That to me is what's beautiful about the ranch. So we're gonna put these right in there. Look how beautiful, it just smells good. It's gonna taste good. We're gonna put some black pepper. That's super important. We're gonna put some salt. That's not even a question. And then since I have it out, we're gonna do a little bit of that dried garlic again, or the garlic powder. That's gonna just balance it all, and we're gonna mix this together. And it's always important once we get it whisked. Anything you make, you need to taste it. You need to taste it for seasonings, you need to taste it to make sure it's good. Look how beautiful and quick that is to make. I love a good buttermilk dressing, I do. So I'm just gonna taste a little bit. Needs a little bit more salt. You can't get it right always the first time, even if you measure it. Sometimes you just taste it and it just is a little bit different. So I'm gonna stir that right in there, set this aside. In a couple minutes here, we're gonna get the salmon on with those radish. Everything's gonna come together. It's a meal. I just pulled the radish out and they're not done yet. We're just going midway here, and you can see though, they're starting to get the brown little edges. I love that. And this is when I wanna start now adding the salmon. So I'm just gonna make a spot for each piece of salmon. Now, I live in Iowa. I cannot go get fresh salmon. I get frozen salmon because that's what you can get. So don't feel like this has to be fresh salmon, but I do get good quality frozen salmon. Try to find like sustainably caught. That's a good piece of salmon. That's what you want here. And then what I'm doing is I'm just making spots around it, which is wonderful, which it has a little bit of butter underneath it, but we're gonna add a little, today is an ode to butter and my love for it, because it really does have so much flavor. And it does, if you get good butter, have good properties in it too. And a lot of times you can use ghee with this, which I'm using ghee today, which is just clarified butter. But what I love is it has so much good flavor, and we're adding that right here to the salmon. And you can see how it's just getting right on top where we want it. And this is what's gonna flavor it. And then we have that sauce go over the top. So I'm gonna just make sure I rub that around on all the salmon, make sure I get it coated where I want it. And then what we need to do is we need to season it. So we need to season it with just some salt and some pepper, which is super important when you're roasting anything, but meat needs that salt. So we're gonna put the salt right on it. And we're gonna make sure, I always use kosher salt, which remember, kosher salt measures differently than table salt. So if you're used to table salt, you always have to adjust a recipe because kosher salt has bigger granulars. And then we're gonna put on some pepper, some fresh pepper. Get that over the top. I'm not gonna worry about seasoning the salmon with dill because we have dill on the radish and we're gonna have it on the dressing. So I'm gonna put this back in just to finish roasting. The rice will be done. We can put this all together. It smells good already. You can see that they're roasted, and I check the temperature of the salmon. You can cook it to the doneness you like. I like it on the little bit more lower side. I don't like overcooked salmon. But now you can just plate it up. So our rice finished about the same time. If you time everything perfectly, which I get the first time you make it, it may not be perfect, but you can just time it out so it almost is. What I love about salmon after it roasts or grills, usually, not always, you can pretty easily pick it up and hopefully take off that skin. See how it just pretty much comes off? Look at that. Like that to me is what's so beautiful about when you roast it well, how it can just fall off like that. You don't even have to worry about it. So once I take that off, you can, if you want, you could flake it kind of over your rice or whatever. I mean, look how beautiful that is. That's the salmon. And we'll just put a few radishes on. Like I said, they get beautiful and tender. I love this. I love the radish. And then what I do with the ranch, I put it in a bottle. It just makes it a little bit easier, but you can do whatever you want just to get some over the top. And see, now you can just serve this beautiful meal. It has everything on it. And the sauce is really what kind of brings it together. I'm just gonna be honest. But let me make sure I get a radish in this because that's one of my favorite parts. That dill hits you a little bit after. That radish still has just a little bit of crispness, but super tender and soft in the middle. And that I didn't get a good chunk of salmon. With the salmon, that works so perfectly. And then you get the rice in there too, so it becomes a whole meal. This is a really great, it might take you out of your comfort zone dish, but that's what I love about it. And I think that's what we need to do, is have dishes that take us out of the normal, out of the mundane, elevate it and use something that we have, which is radish. Go to a grocery store, you're gonna find radish, farmer's market radish, or maybe I talked you into growing it this year when I was planting mine. So maybe you have some of your own. It's a great way to utilize it. Roasting them brings out so much more unique flavors with the butter, with the herbs. When you pair it with salmon and the rice, it becomes such a great full meal that your whole family is gonna love. So what do I hope you do with this? I hope you share this video around. If you found anything helpful in it, someone else might too. And if you want the recipe, check my website, wiseguide.com. That's where this recipe is and all my other recipes. Until then, I'm gonna keep eating. Hope you do too.